Hello, in today's demonstration, I am going to try and triple down. What do I mean? I'm going to try and show layers in a painting, beginning with how to put a wash down. I'm going to explore using round, angled, and flat brushes, and show you marks that can be made with, they're three-dimensional objects with multiple surfaces. So I'm going to try and demonstrate those different surfaces. And the third thing I'm going to try and bring in while demonstrating these layers and mark making is, can the line work that I'm going to create with these brushes, can I connect it to an emotion as a means of creating a compositional structure? I think so. So if the emotion part doesn't appeal to you, that's fine. You can still do the layering. But anyway, I have chosen the feeling of anxiety, which seems to be quite popular these days. So I picked, and it kind of gives me, when I have anxiety, I get kind of this queasy feeling, sort of in the pit of my stomach. And so I picked sort of these, I'm going to call them kind of queasy colors, these grays. I'm going to put a little indigo, a pop of some red in there. There's usually some frustration associated with anxiety. And then I'm hoping by the end of the whole experience to kind of get to calmer waters. And I've picked this tropical green. So if you're going to connect it to an emotion you're painting, it might be helpful to pick the feeling, or it could be an incident, and connect that with color. Okay, but first we're going to begin with laying down a foundational wash. So I've got this chip brush here. You can use a wash brush. A chip brush will do the same thing. I'm going to wet my paper. This is a sheet of Bristol paper. You could use canvas paper. I'm going to drop some high flow acrylic on there. Yellow is kind of an anxious, queasy color, like bile. It's the association I'm making. Okay, so I've got, that's a wash. Now, if you don't have liquid paint, you would add water to regular acrylic paint and liquefy it to create a wash. Now, the other thing I can do that's really nice is with the back of my brush or a stick, I can already start putting in some marks that might be associated to that feeling. It's nice. I can kind of dig into that surface and set the stage. If I don't like it, I can erase some of it. Some of it is already sort of, the paint has seeped into the surface of that Bristol paper. But anyway, these are kind of the marks that I am feeling. This could be a potential compositional structure. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to start bringing in some more layers. I'm going to start with my round brush. Let me bring my paints over here. Okay. I'm going to start with the, I don't know, I'm going to go kind of instinctually. And of course, I pick the brush that the top of it keeps falling off. So now I've lost that. Oh, here it is. Okay. Time for a little repair here. Yeah, I'm going to start, I was going to start with gray, but it feels like red. I'm going to continue with these marks. I'm using the tip of my brush and kind of scrubbing a round. So with a round brush, you've got the point, and then there's going to be the flat, longer surface. I'm going to keep with that feeling of anxiety that I started with, And then if it takes off and goes in another direction, that is fine. It's just my starting point. Okay, so I have the tip and the flat of the brush. Now I'm going to go on to my flat brush, and I'm going to put in, I'm going to go with some of this gray here. Okay, so the flat brush has multiple surfaces. I'm going to say three. So I've got the flat surface there. Then I've got the side of my flat brush. If I hold it to the side, I'm going to get a slightly narrower line. And then I've got the it's that front edge again, but if I drag it across, I'm going to get a more uh, precise, crisp line. I'll show you this again with the angled brush. It's a lot more obvious. Okay, now I'm going to do the angled brush, and I'll bring in some indigo paint so you can really see the different edges. Again, I've got this, the width of my brush, the widest surface, that mark. So within this, using the emotion as a compositional structure, I'm also exploring the marks the various brushes I chose can make. Okay, I'll shift gears to, then if I hold it upwards, I'm going to get a really nice crisp edge. And so it's those two main edges, the flat and the top edge, but I can also use the side, either side of the brush too. Probably not I'm not going to gravitate towards that one as much, but that's also a possibility. Okay, let's see now. Come back to a bigger round brush with a lighter, I'm calling it the queasy color. So there's the wash layer, there's the marks that the brush makes from its various surfaces, and then of course there's paint consistency. I'm going to go more transparent or um, thicker impasto, which is what I'm doing now, but I'm still letting some of the yellow wash layer peek through, which gives the painting more depth. Now I'm in that flow state and I'm just kind of gobbing it on. I think I'm going to bring my turquoise in pretty soon here. Um, it's interesting that I started with anxiety because I'm sort of seeing this burst or explosion of energy that maybe feels more positive. Okay, I'm going to go with the turquoise now and see if I can bring little bits of that in for contrast. Now I'm just doing little impasto dots as my brush falls apart here. So I went with fairly straight and staccato lines to go with that feeling, but obviously now I'm squiggling a little bit more. Obviously, the lines you can put down will change, um, varying on the feeling. And the paint is starting to get to that stage where it's fairly wet, and so if I keep going, it could just turn into mud. I'm going to put more of this indigo, just going for it, not even bothering to wash my brush. That's what happens sometimes when I get so into that flow state. And then I'm going to wind this down here, but then there's other things I can employ too. The scratching in, this graffito to make finer marks and scrape through and see some of that underpainting. It sort of feels like a explosion of energy, a sunflower, or it could be kind of fireworks. My takeaway is I think connecting line work to feeling is kind of a nice way to start a painting. Leaves it pretty open-ended and it can transform. So I'm looking at this, um, and I think I would let this dry, and then if I wanted to, there's more I can add. It's rather symmetrical, but that's not really what the purpose of this lesson is about. It's more of a understanding layers, wash, layer, how to do that, incorporating marks from different brushes, connected to feeling, and see if that brings, we can use it as a compositional structure, and if it brings maybe more energy and vibrancy to our painting. And I think it does, but we're going to see what you create. All right, that is it.